Hey there, all. I thought we'd go ahead and start with a little bit of syllabus action. It is Thursday before we start a new week as I'm recording this, and um, it is gross and rainy out and cold and nasty, and I think I might move to Arizona. Just kidding. Um, I will say that there are challenges that come with different seasons and teaching, and I noticed that a couple of you have some holiday ideas. I think it's really great to grasp onto the energy that certain holidays automatically bring to classrooms instead of fighting it as teachers. I think it's smart for us to think about classroom management in terms of how to make the natural momentum of a certain season or event work for us. And some of you captured that quite well. I used to always plan. Now it was a rural Ohio district, and Christmas was not taboo. We could talk about Christmas, but to make it a little bit more culturally sensitive and to also get my kids to think outside of their very Ohioan box, I would have them research. We do projects about Christmases around the world, or how an equivalent holiday is celebrated, and we had some fun with it, and it made the whole season a little like the hecticness was is that a word, was planned by me, and so I felt more in control of it. Maybe, I don't know, kind of control freak. All of that to say that it ended up being a more pleasant season for all of us. And you have to plan an ebb and flow in your work, where there's intense times where you're going to be doing a lot of grading and a lot of intense one-on-one stuff, and then times where students are more on their own, and there's more group grading and more that kind of assessment, just so you don't burn out. This is really important practical stuff. Okay, so we are looking at the Unit 6 here in Classroom Management and Workload Management. And I do want to backtrack on one thing that needed some clarification. A lot of us are struggling with the concept of reflection. And Outwell has some comments on reflection, and some of the readings we did in class talk about reflection. What I mean when I say planning reflection activities for your students, if we think of like a pre-writing activity, this would be a post-writing, or perhaps even a concurrent with the writing process activity, where you deliberately and intentionally craft activities or assignments where students are thinking about their own thinking, their metacognition stuff, the stuff where they're trying to figure out what they're good at and what they're not good at and what they would do differently. Sometimes I roll this into my feedback. I think I shared with you my feedback form, where students give me their reflection about their writing, and then I reflect back to them what I think about it. So this is separate from editing. It could be, if you use the interactive rubric, I think you could justify that interactive rubric as both reflective and evaluative in nature, but I would be very intentional and make sure that there's also some reflection pieces in that. Okay, let's look ahead here at what we got going on. The blog that you did your initial entries into the discussion board and blog, and now you're replying to two classmates for each of those items. When you reply to the discussion board, a lot of that's just sort of like opinion stuff, and just maybe recognize where people's good points are, maybe challenge some of their thought processes, maybe share out resources that come to mind as you read. As you look at their blog here, notice what they say about them, and hopefully they're the expert on those top 10 things. Ask questions about their top 10, or if it reminds you of another tool that you think is similar, that you even like better, recommend something. These would be all really valid and valuable types of replies, but you may have another way of replying as well. What we're really working on this week, or spending most of our time on, is the wiki. And I will say this, even as I say that we're spending most of our time on this, this is probably one of the shorter wiki assignments I'm having you do. And you might want to start looking at how you organize your wiki for that final edit that's coming up, because there's no new wiki material after this week. So you can start thinking of how you're going to edit your wiki. I apologize that in Unit 5 the wikis got all dumped together. I'm not sure what I exactly did when I set them up, and I'm not even sure I can take the full blame, but I will, just because I created it. Okay, so Wiki, create a monthly plan or calendar page. It can look any way you want. Roughing in a rotation of writing, conferencing, teaching, grading, pacing work. Basically, I want you to take your units and at least create one calendar with one of your units. If you want to sketch out everything, fine. I know not all of your tasks are concurrent with one another, and that's fine. But give me 1 month plan using the writing ideas that you've developed, but you don't have to fit all of them into the 1 month, and you may create more than 1 month. So let me restate that. The only thing you have to have is 1 month planned out, and I'm not talking about a detailed lesson plan for every day. I'm talking about a general rotation that shows how you're going to use what you've designed in a calendar month. Okay? And it can be very unique to how you interpret and that kind of thing. But I want you to start thinking about, how would I pace this out? What would this really look like if I was planning a whole course? Many of you will go into schools where your curriculum is already developed, and many of you will be starting from scratch. And some of you will be doing a little bit of both. It just kind of depends on, obviously, the scenario that you hire into. So maybe this could be something that even if somebody else was looking at your wiki, they could see a different visual representation of how they could teach out your plan. Speaking of, as you go to clean up your wiki, keep in mind that this is a portfolio whose audience is teachers. Now, the tools inside of them, like the PowerPoints and the worksheets, are for students. So when you are editing your wiki, you're not writing it to me. You're writing it to all writing teachers. And when you are creating your handouts, they shouldn't say, I would tell students, because you're giving that to students, and you wouldn't write on a student's paper that you're telling them something, right? So make sure that you're clear in all of your audiences. And because this is a writing type of task, we want to make sure that all of our grammar and all of that stuff is all cleaned up for the final project. So again, final project isn't due for a couple more weeks, but this is the last new thing. You don't have to start editing this week, but you can start moving in that direction, sort of knowing what you're doing. Okay, we already did these readings and so forth, have a little bit exploring nature in them, especially this graphite. So I would encourage you to go and look through that. I just want to share with you a little bit about something that I'm learning more about, and that you had a video on this week as well, and that's the concept of blended learning. I think it's something that you're going to hear about and see more of in your different cultures of schools that you go to. I think I've shared with you before that I taught at a very traditional brick and mortar where I didn't even have a smart board, okay? We would say not even just traditional, but maybe a little bit backwards, okay? They just tore down my old building and built a shiny new one with all the technology in it several years ago. But when I was there for 10 years, I remember when they installed the phone in my room. Now I'm starting to talk like an old woman, right? So I taught in that extreme, and then I went literally from that to Capital to teaching online. And so I think what I've noticed is that in the last 7 to 10 years, we're seeing a real change and shift in education in a lot of ways. And I want you to be familiar with this term blended. And I think the reason I really want to teach it right now is because when we talk about classroom management, workload management, and writing workshop, it is a perfect cocktail of blended learning potential. Blended learning is not learning that's technology rich. It's learning that blends online and traditional practices together. The key is that when a classroom is blended, students have they're not confined to a time and place for their learning, and therefore they can move at their own individual pace. An example of a product that looks like blended learning, in my opinion, is my son's math program that I told about the other week. What is it called? Not Extra Math. That was last year's. This is have all their passwords right here in a basket. Anyway, he has mastered subtraction and addition. Not all of his classmates have. So he gets to keep moving on while the others are still reviewing their basic facts. Now, that's one program, and that's a technology-rich idea. But what if translating that to the writing classroom, what if we would have a rotation model where we either rotate to a lab or we rotate within the room? I've mentioned this before. Or what if we intentionally, on certain days of the week, have the lab for our classrooms? And again, this is a little, you have to be age sensitive. I get that. I'm most comfortable with the 7 through 12 scene, so I'm just going to use that as an example. If students know that Monday, Wednesday, and Friday we're in lab, and I have different activities for them to do on those days, or if I send home a video, statistically 85% of our students have access to smart technology. We can figure out what to do with the other 15%. My guess is the school can afford something that would help those students. What if I would give my instruction to them about their writing in a video, and then they come to class to actually write instead of using the writing as the homework? Where do they really need the most assistance? What if on those lab days students have different modules they go to that help them to hone in on specific skills in their writing, but they're not all the same skills, and they can even access that material at home? Again, it's more individualized. It allows us to scaffold, allows us to tier instruction, and allows us to be more than one place at the same time. So teachers in elementary have been doing this, similar things for years when we have reading groups, but then we tend to track students. What if students are allowed to track themselves in terms of accelerate at a faster pace or go slower if they need to? I don't have all the answers, but I want you to think about how you can think outside of the box in presenting your ideas and getting these, scheduling these writing workshops on paper. How are you going to, what is your role going to be? Looking back to that very original page that talked about your roles and goals in the writing classroom, and how are you going to accomplish being that and getting the product you want from students when there's 30 students in a writing classroom? So I just want you to consider ways that you might creatively teach out your work. You already created a lot of neat things, and how are we going to put them all together? How is it going to fit? I've got this worksheet, I've got this reflection, I've got this writing test, they're going to do this, this, and this, but how are they going to do it? How are you going to teach it out? What is it going to look like to students? Where are they going to need the most support from you? And how are you going to offer that to them? I had a really fun teaching day today in a college classroom that I've blended. I had grammar modules set up for them to work through. I taught them I showed them some tools online that help them pace their own writing and provide support and scaffolding for their writing for a basic writing class. And I spent my class time working with individuals. We caught some holes in the grade book. We caught some individual questions that never would have been asked in a whole group setting. And everybody was heads down, not sleeping, but actually writing something. And they left with a vision for their paper. It was exciting stuff. I used to assign all of that, and I would be disappointed with the results. I think I might be learning something, and I'm really excited about it. Hopefully, you can apply this to your own teaching, and maybe it makes sense to you at some level. Have a great week, and let me know if you need anything at all. Talk to you later.